Good morning, everyone. I want to do a quick video with you guys on the scientific revolution and to explain some of the stuff that I went over in class. So I'm going to begin by sharing my screen. And I'm going to start in Jupyter Ed. If you see the screen in front of you, you'll see that I've already logged into my sample student. I want to show you guys where to go. If you go down into Global History 3, you'll be able to see the assignments I've posted so far. So we began with student intro video. Next up was the scientific revolution, and coming up next is the French Revolution. So we can go ahead and click on scientific revolution and enlightenment. And you will see the information here. I also have notes located on my website. So if you ever need to get to my website for various and sundry resources, click on materials and you're going to see this sites.google.com. Click on that link and it's going to take you directly to my website. I have video lessons from last year on here, and I also have a link to my YouTube channel on there as well. I'm not posting the video lessons on the website because it's too much data, it slows it down, and it really just works more efficiently for playback when you guys go to YouTube to watch the videos. Okay. If you're looking for the Pulse website, there's a link here, as well as government. Some resources to help you succeed in this class. And over here, I have everything arranged topically. So we're starting with the Enlightenment period. On this page, there are some interactive notebooks that you can complete to help you understand the materials better. We might have a little bit of work from there embedded into some of our Juno pods. There are Pinterest folders, or if I click on one like the scientific revolution, you can see the resources listed right here for the scientific revolution. Every topic has resources. So when you're going to Pinterest, you're going to find that stuff is available that are video based, some things that are based upon reading, some things that are based upon gameplay. Others, might be charts and graphs and that sort of thing. So pick the resource that helps you. You really want to go with, knowing how you learn. You pick the resource on how you learn. Here in Quizlet, there is a bunch of vocab. So you can understand the topics, but if you can't understand the questions that I'm asking, you're going to have a really hard time. The system's running a little bit slow, so I'm not going to wait for that, but there are a number of resources. Quizlet and Pinterest are both free apps that you can sign up for. And here on Quizlet and Pinterest as well, you can make your own sets. You can make your own resources and just copy mine. So you can see here that under Age of Enlightenment, if I click on it, it's going to give me the definition. I can play that. I can test myself by shuffling the words. In this unit, I have 38. There are games that you can play. I can have it read to me. There's all sorts of resources for trying to make sure that you understand all of the materials. So for today, we're going to start off with the scientific revolution. Scientific revolution is this period of time where the use of logic, science, and math transform the order of society. And anytime we are talking about the word revolution, we are talking about the idea of change, right? Revolution, in a word, basically means change. And so anytime you talk about change, you kind of have to ask yourself, what is that change? The change, when you have a change, you start off with one thing and then you kind of end up with something else. So you got to ask yourself, what did I start up with? What did I end with? You have to identify those two things. So in the scientific revolution, you were talking about primarily European society at this point. European society was structured primarily around the Catholic Church. The church was very powerful at this time, and the way in which the church set things up was according to their doctrine. Church doctrine stated that, God created the world. So if you were born a king, that's because God made you a king. If you were born a peasant, that is because God made you a peasant. And when you question the order of things, when you question, your place in life during that time period, you're really questioning the authority of God. And that is a very weighty idea when you are brought up with the belief system that you can suffer in this life and you'll be rewarded with eternal life in heaven. Or you can cause trouble in this life, and according to the Catholic Church, the reward, your punishment is going to be, burning in hell for all of eternity. So, when that feels very, very real to the people of that time, they're going to be very hesitant to challenge the authority of the church because, what if I'm wrong? What if I really do burn in hell for all of eternity? Is that price worth it? And a scientific revolution really kind of starts to pull away at that power of the church. The scientific method is this idea that, information is gathered using observations. So first you come up with a hypothesis. And a hypothesis, the way a hypothesis is structured is it's kind of like your statements, right? And when we write, and then you are going to gather information and you're going to prove that hypothesis true or false. The way a hypothesis works is fundamentally, it's a question. Even if it's written as a statement, it's really a question because you have to gather the information, the evidence to see whether or not your idea is correct or incorrect. That means people have to be open to the idea that they might be wrong, right? That is fundamental part of the scientific method, is being open to the idea that your ideas might be incorrect. And so this provides an orderly way to investigate ideas. It separates people's ideas from their preconceptions, from their biases. People don't start with a statement and then look for evidence that proves themselves right. Under the scientific method, you start with a hypothesis and then you gather all the evidence and you follow the story that the evidence is telling you. Okay. So what are some of the effects of the scientific revolution? Well, through study, we're able to, push the idea more of an earth-centered model of the universe. We move from this religious and culturally based beliefs to science and math-based belief. We start using logic instead of bias and assumption. Okay. And this is helped along by technology advances. So if you look at the idea of the plague during, medieval times in Europe, people had no idea as to germs and viruses and that sort of stuff because there's no telescope then, there's no microscope, there's no telescope for looking out into the stars, and there is no microscope for looking out or down into our cellular structures, right? So when those technology advances occur, telescope were able to study the universe much more closely and gather evidence and see that the Earth isn't the center of the universe. With a microscope, we're able to put samples underneath the lens of a microscope and see a whole new world. Who knew about germs until the microscope came along? It's too small for the human eye to see, so how would you know it exists? There are also, changes in methodology. So the church is telling, people this idea of divine right of kings. Kings have the right to rule because that power comes from God. And when you challenge the king, you challenge God. But if you follow scientific method, and on one mortuary slab we have a king, and on the other mortuary slab we have a peasant, and you do a dissection, how are they really different? They're not. If you open up the king, you can find a heart, you can find lungs, you can find a circulatory system. And if you open up the peasant, you're going to find the same things. So people really start to question, but we're not made differently. We are all made the same with a little bit of variation. So if we're all made the same, what really makes us different? Because it's clearly not biology. What really makes us different is our experiences. Our experiences and what we go through is what creates it different. That's our circumstance, right? So yes, the king might have a better physical shape because of access to better nutrition, because of access to better health care, because of access to education, right, than the peasant. That's not biology. All of those things are circumstance. You can provide education to everybody. You can provide better nutrition to everybody, and you can provide better health care to people as well, right? So if what keeps us separate are circumstances, we can change that. Wealthy are not necessarily better people because they're wealthy, right? And wealthy people are not better people because, you know, they might have a job or they might know powerful people. That doesn't make anybody better. And the people who don't have access to those things are not less. Okay. So this is a slide that you guys really need to know very, very, very intimately. Okay. I'm going to start off with natural rights. These Enlightenment ideals are fundamental to understanding Global 3 and Global 4, and I would argue the world around us, especially during these times. Natural rights are rights that belong to people simply because they're human. You're born, you took a breath, you're alive, you have natural rights, right? The idea of having a right to safety, to having a right to security, right? These are very, very basic. You don't have to do anything to earn them. Simply being is enough. I'm going to skip social contract theory and come back for a minute. Rule of law. Rule of law states that officials make decisions based on written rules, not on personal beliefs or preferences. So the way in which rules are written should not be based on bias. And rules are also supposed to be applied equally to all persons. So if you're looking at rule of law in perfect practice, there's a sense of equality, right? There's not a sense of benefit because of better access to resources, to wealth, to that sort of stuff. In theory, those rules are supposed to be applied equally to all persons. Now, we all know that that's not how the world works. If that worked perfectly, there would be no systemic racism. There would not be misogyny. There would not be, you know, bias against the LGBTQ community, right? But these are our ideals, okay? Consent of the governed. We all know by now consent means permission. So now we need to ask ourselves, who are the governed? We are the governed. The people are the governed. So this is the idea that the government exists through the permission of the people to rule. We give permission and we can take back permission. And we do that through active participation in our government structures. That active participation can come in multiple forms. It can come in the form of activism. It can be in the form of community outreach. It could be voter registration. It could be attending protests. It could be making telephone calls and tweets to our elected leaders, writing letters, writing emails, you know, getting out and voting, completing the census. You know, those are all things that actively engage people in their government. And those are ways in which people can show their approval of government or their disapproval. Now, the one that I think is most important, and the one that we're going to end on, is the idea of social contract theory. The idea that people surrender their will to the government in exchange for safety and stability. Surrendering your will does not mean you give up your rights. You do not give up your rights. You never give up your rights. Never, 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 never. You never give up your rights. Surrender your will means that you follow the rules and laws. Okay? So this is a contract, just like my phone contract with AT&T. And both parties have rights and responsibilities. So with my phone contract, I have 5 lines, I think, right now. So I have 5 lines, and my right is to expect service from AT&T, the agreed upon service. And my responsibility is to pay that bill in full every month, right? AT&T, their responsibility is to provide me my service. and their right is to expect me to pay for that service that they're providing. So when you have a contract, there are rights and responsibilities of both parties on either side. So the government is supposed to provide overall, predominantly, safety and stability to its people. That doesn't mean that nothing bad's ever going to happen. It means that overall, by and large, the government is providing safety and stability to its people. And in exchange, people agree to follow the rules and laws. Now, you guys all know social contract theory. You know it through your music. You know it through the news. Okay? If you take a look at the city I come from, Chicago, you look at it through the lens of social contract theory, it actually kind of makes a lot of sense. So if you look at areas that are, not great areas, high rates of poverty, not a lot of opportunity, and controlled by gangs. If you look at those neighborhoods, for a long time, the government has not been there. The government has not provided safety and stability to the people. Police wouldn't show up until well after, crimes were committed, and it's just a scene to clean up. EMTs didn't feel safe going into areas in order to help people because they would get shot at by snipers, right? It's very unstable. There's not a lot of job opportunity. There's not a lot of public transportation to geographically get out of the neighborhood to resources, even if they are kind of nearby in the city. How are you going to get there? So the government was not providing safety and stability. In Chicago, you have to go to your neighborhood school. But that means if you come from, a neighborhood that's not great, your school's not going to be great either. And so you're not going to get a very good education. And that becomes, a cycle. After a while, people aren't going to follow the laws of the government and the rules of the government because where's the government? What's the government doing for people? Nothing. So people stop following the laws. They start following the rules of the group that is in charge there, that does have a presence. And that's where you see people kind of shift their alliance, out of necessity. The government's not here. The police aren't here. The schools aren't here, really. It's not doing very much for us. And so we're not going to live by those rules. But I'll tell you what, the gang is here. And sometimes those do provide more economic viability than the government is offering. And they do provide safety as long as you follow their rules to a certain extent for the people, who are within their sphere, right? A lot of people join gangs because there isn't any economic opportunity for them that they can see. And they don't feel like they are in a safe place that is supported, right? So even though it's a very dangerous situation, it's better than what the government's offering. So people gravitate to, the set of rules that are present. That's social contract theory. People will surrender their will to a government or to whatever power structure, as long as that power structure is able to offer some form of safety and stability. Okay. So we are going to stop there for now. If you did not attend class, I hope that helps you address the questions that are within the Jupyter pod. Please remember to get those turned in a timely manner. And next up, we'll be talking about the various aspects of the French Revolution.